I am Ben Doc Askins, the psychedelic science war storyteller, and this is the Anti-Hero's Journey podcast. What's up, Anti-Hero's Journey podcast listening crew? I am Ben Doc Askins, and this is my podcast, even though I talk less than anybody else ever does on any given podcast. This will be one of the only times you hear me speak, because I invite really awesome people on here to share their stories, and that's the point, is to hear some really good stories, especially those that are around the psychedelic science space. If you are interested, though, in getting some ketamine-assisted therapy in Kentucky, I have some spaces available in my private practice outside of Louisville. You can go to advancedpracticeproviders.com to find out more details there. Or if you do want to hear about me and my bullshit, you can read my book or download the audiobook from antiheroesjourney.com, just like the Anti-Hero's Journey podcast. The hero's journey is pretty cool if you're a kid, but if you're grown, it's time to step up and get on board with the Anti-Hero's Journey. Figure out what that's all about. Check it out. That's enough from me, though. Let's get down to the point of the episode. Is the gentleman that I invited on today. His name is Amil Patel, and he is the co-founder and CEO of Meeko Health, where they are shifting the mental health narrative for America's workforce. Prior to this role, Amil served as the vice president and head of pharmacy at Alto Pharmacy, worked as an inpatient pharmacist in the United States Air Force, managed a Walgreens pharmacy, and worked as a pharmacist at Express Scripts. Amil holds a Doctor of Pharmacy degree from the University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy in St. Louis, and he's calling me in from San Francisco today. Amil, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, my friend.
Thanks so much for having me, Doc. Love it.
Yeah. Well, let's get down to business, man. What's your story?
Yeah, my story is really generic, kind of vanilla. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a child of immigrants, and my parents were both from Kenya, Africa, which is just really cool. Yeah, so I kind of grew up taking family trips to Kenya, which is cool.
Umeelewa Kiswahili?
A little bit. It's gotten rust. It's gotten very rusty.
Kidogo sana.
Kidogo sana. I love it.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, my childhood was all in kind of Brookfield, Wisconsin, suburb of Milwaukee, and I have a younger brother. Both my parents are engineers. My mom's an electrical engineer. She's kind of badass. She worked for the Air Force out of college, working on fighter jets and the kind of navigation programming systems on fighter jets, which is really cool. Then she kind of went over and worked at GE Medical Systems and worked on building out the MRI machine back when that was a thing. My father is a chemical engineer. He started his own.
Magnetic.
Yeah, she's magnetic. But my father is a chemical engineer. He came here and he's just like immediately wanted to be an entrepreneur. He owned a laundromat in kind of Southside Chicago. He drove from Milwaukee to Chicago every day. And that just wasn't great. I held at gunpoint and I kind of learned like, oh man, this isn't the kind of entrepreneurship I want to do. And he kind of navigated his way into starting seasonings company, Creative Seasonings, a food seasonings business. It's like so cool. And that was like most of my childhood, was witnessing my dad, and like just very acutely aware of my dad going through the motions of building a company from scratch and being able to kind of go and check out the seasonings company, Creative, and learn about like his interactions with like Jack Link. He would go and hang out with Jack Links in the Dakotas, and then like his sharing in his celebration when he would get like the McDonald's account or the Starbucks account. He'd get so excited. He's like, oh man, they're like nice. Pumpkin spice latte. That was my thing.
Nice.
Yeah, that was cool. And I just had a regular.
That's interesting.
Yeah, regular childhood. I went off to pharmacy school in St. Louis, Missouri. It's where I met my co-founder, Nick, just a gem of a human. And then kind of navigated through career and all the fun, typical stuff. And today I'm just a regular guy. I'm a father of three beautiful girls. Enjoying it, and like I'm constantly thinking through today. What am I here to do? What really brings me joy and passion and like what I don't know what is my ikigai. I think that's something that I'm like mindful of constantly these days. What is that, and what is my center? And that's kind of led me down this path more recently over the last couple of years of kind of unfolding. What does it mean to reach a state of equanimity and peace? And like, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for other people? And how do we all kind of collectively help people move in that direction? Because I think that concept and that idea of being at peace is something that I know for me has been really, really, really important in kind of witnessing my own development from child to adolescent to young man to father and adult with real responsibilities. As I think the big inflection point in my life. I'm only 36 years old, so I've got a lot ahead of me, hopefully. But the big inflection point in my life was really becoming a father. Becoming a father was the big kind of moment of everything's changed. Responsibility was a big kind of theme that I would journal about through becoming a father 3 times. And becoming a father also for me brought back a lot of pain from childhood. And that got me really curious about, why that was happening. And it brought me to places where I was just really struggling with wrapping my head around this concept and this idea of like equanimity. How do I find peace? And that led me down a path of learning more about what we in the United States consider mental health care. It led me down a path of learning kind of for the first time for myself, how do we diagnose it? What's the history of mental health care? What's the history of diagnosing mental health care? How do we actually diagnose mental health disorders, which they're called? And like, what does it mean to treat them? And how do we treat them? And like, I was researching all this and kind of with the goal of applying it to myself. And that kind of led me to this world of psychedelics and psychedelic therapy. And, that's where I've just committed my time, energy, and focus to date. It's really just learning firsthand how little we currently understand about mental health, how much opportunity there is to learn more and as things unfold, and just how impactful psychedelic therapy was for me outside of everything else that I've tried for kind of grappling with my own mental health and wanting to fight for it, wanting to do what I could to kind of get on a soapbox and fight for what I believed in, which is, I think, fighting for equitable access to psychedelic therapies is kind of driving me today.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool story. Your dad being into like spices reminds me of some of the small clinical trials around like saffron and antidepressants and lavender. There's a lavender pill they're looking at getting FDA approval for anxiety, some of that sort of stuff. Yeah, like I don't remember the details off the top of my head, but yeah. Maybe your dad was just a little leading the way a little bit ahead of us, the rest of us in that regard. Sounds like your mom was way out in front of a bunch of us anyway. Yeah, that's a pretty awesome story from where you're coming from to where you're headed. Are you willing to like double click a little bit on, like you talked about ikigai and finding your own purpose and peace, but also the role that psychedelic assisted therapy has played for you. How has that been meaningful and helpful to you in that pursuit of peace?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think fundamentally psychedelic therapy, specifically MDMA therapy, for the first time in my life allowed me to find peace during the first session. It was this moment of clarity and realization that this is what peace is, in fact. This is what it feels like. And, able to carry that with me after my psychedelic session. I think that was just very, it was just like very real and present with me. And I think that is, that concept of peace, to me, at least to me, it really kind of folds into the idea of ikigai as well. Like if you find your ikigai, you find your purpose, and you can kind of, once you tap into that, once you identify that, it can change over time for sure. Everything changes, but if you can find what it is for you now in this moment, I think that creates a container of peace through which things can unfold. You can learn, you can make mistakes. You can just be present without any sort of goal, without any sort of want or desire. You can just be very present with what's happening right now. And you can be kind of in the sense of both peace and at play, with just like, trying to push buttons and trying to see what happens, trying to see what sticks. But it has to come from a sense of purpose and a sense of self-awareness, self-understanding, and conviction. Like this is what I, these are my values, and this is what I stand for, and this is what I'm going to attempt to do.
I like to ask these 5 questions in preparation for ketamine assisted therapy in my clinic. So I don't want to double click too far down or, like invite you to therapy in public or anything weird like that. But I just wanted to kind of hear a bit more of your story there. I ask about people's story to get into like memory and where they're coming from and the past, and the way that you tell your story frames and influences then the way that you write it going forward, which is why the second question that I ask is about intentions and about imagination, about where you're headed. You've mentioned equitable access and Meeko and some of the things that you're doing there, and that you're a dad. So what are your intentions going forward, Amil?
Before we go forward, one thing that I want to click on as part of my story, that I think will help thread the needle here is, when I became a father, I kind of mentioned I had this uncovering of a lot of pain from my childhood, and I want to be super clear from the get-go. I had an amazing childhood. I have incredible parents. My parents live, right down the road here. I see them every week. They're incredible human beings. I love them with my whole heart. What I realized as I was going through my own kind of journey, if you will, of self-discovery and finding peace, I realized that, and again, this is my story, right? Take with it what you will. But what I realized for myself is that children are born into the world. They're not asked, they don't ask to be here. They're just brought here. And, when a child comes into the world, every single child is its unique thumbprint, right? They all have their own unique kind of expectations, their own desires, their own wants, their own needs. And I think generally on the margin, parents that bring children into the world, they do so with nothing but the best intention, right? Is to love and support this child in the best way that they can with the tools and support that they have available. And I think for me, there was this big kind of story arc and learning that, look, I had so much pain from childhood, from specific stories and memories of events that created, to me, so much pain because of the specific framing of the story that I had, right? It was like, oh man, I remember that I got bad grades and I was treated this way. I remember the specific memory, the specific event what everyone was wearing that has been like captured in my imagination. Or I remembered, my bad grades led to a deep feeling of shame. And I would end up, a report card. Back in those days, report cards were mailed to the house. And I would get home off the school bus. I would open the mailbox before my parents got home from work. I would take out the report card. I would go home and I would hide it in my room. And of course, my parents would celebrate getting my brother's report card. They'd be like, Amil, where's yours? And I would lie to them. I'm like, I have no idea where my report card is, right? Like the school must have not sent it. Or I remember I was such a good liar. It's like, oh, my school stopped sending report cards.
Yeah. My grades were so good, they didn't bother.
Yeah. Right. I just come up with stories. And as a young child, right? I mean, it was quite young. It was like middle school. What I was trying to do is I was just trying to protect myself. I was selfish. I was trying to protect myself from this deep pain of shame, of judgment, of whatever. And it's so, looking back on that, it's easy to look back on that and be like, how, you can laugh at it. It's like so silly. In the moment as a child, that was the world to me. I remember shaking at the thought of like, what lie am I going to craft and create to my mom and dad around this issue of like my grades? Like, I don't want to feel the shame of bringing home a C, right? And like my parents aren't from this country. Like their assumption is just like, we want to do everything we can to push our child to get A's, because if they get A's in this country, they'll make it, right? They'll make it. Things will work out. And that didn't happen. I just had so much anxiety, so much fear, and internalizing that as a kid and living with the shame of lying, and living with the consequences of being caught in the lie, and living with the hurt that caused my parents, and my parents trying to discipline me out of love of like, hey, we don't want you to lie, but not necessarily understanding or recognizing or taking or having the capacity at the time to sit with the why. Like, let's get to the why. Why is he lying? Right? What are you worried about? Why does this
brand new person feel like they need to twist things to explain them?
Exactly. Yeah. Like how meaningful it was to me as an individual. Again, we're all different thumbprints, but to me, how meaningful it was to be able to bring home bad grades and to have support from my parents around like, hey, you're trying, right? These grades are indicative of not your effort, but of your ability to capture the information and to apply it, right? So it's not indicative of your effort. I know you're trying. And so like, let's sit together on this. Like, how can we work on this? Right? Is it just not exciting for you? Maybe you don't care. There's so much there to unpack, and there's so much that I have unpacked. But I think my big realization in a nutshell is like, look, if you could take my story and apply it to like every single child that's born, if you just focus on the United States today, like, is there something there? I started exploring more information about this concept of children really internalizing events that are traumatic to them, but not necessarily diagnosable PTSD, right? And I started realizing that this, in fact, was a huge issue. This concept of adverse childhood experiences. Like 2/3 of the country has had at least one adverse childhood experience, and how that really those adverse childhood experiences to the individual really end up forming your psyche as a young adult, and as an adult really end up forming your personality structure and how you interact with not only yourself, but how you interact with the world. Like, what are you scared of? What brings you anxiety? What brings you joy? This is like kind of these early experiences really lay the foundation of your nervous system's like fight or flight response system. And so I started getting curious about that and realizing, wow, for me to be able to go through MDMA therapy and be able to kind of sit with those memories, be able to talk through and reframe those memories, and to build empathy around them, forgiveness around them, but most importantly, empathy around them. And that was incredible. And I was like, and I do believe this is the future. We're just, we're on the slow train to get there. It's just a matter of how fast can we go. But the future, I think, is very clear to me, as a world in which we cannot control for the variability of raising children, right? Parents are all raising kids in their own way. And we also can't control the variability of life experiences, right? PTSD, sexual violence. There's so many things that happen throughout the human experience that we cannot control for. And to try and create control is a fool's errand, right? And so if we cannot control for it, but if life is just unfolding and we are creating, we are part of the creation of this unfolding of our life experience, right? We're witnessing it, we're part of it. We're creating it. If there are opportunities in which we can use tools to be able to identify and heal deep wounds that are a part of our psyche, that allow us to find equanimity, to find peace. I think that's a very obvious direction that we all, as individual human beings and as a collective, we all want that for ourselves. We all want that for each other. And so in my mind, it's very clear that, we're going to radically destigmatize this concept and idea of getting the support we need to be able to work through any sort of pain that we're holding in our psyche so that we can find peace. And it's just a question of like, what is the framing for that? What is the actual modality to access that? And what does that look like? I think no matter what kind of narrative or vocabulary you use around it, I think one thing is very clear in my mind is it is going to be access to safe, supportive psychedelic therapies. I think we're going to get there. I don't know how fast we'll get there. I don't know the language that we'll use to allow us to have the permission to talk about it and to talk about access to it. But I think we're on the path there, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I think those are really important intentions. I think it's still not common knowledge, the dose-dependent nature of adverse childhood experiences related to chronic diseases later in life, kind of the way that arrow gets influenced before, like, just as it gets notched and released, still plays a big role on where it lands at the, sixth, seventh, eighth decade in terms of cardiovascular disease and metabolic syndromes and cancers and all of those sorts of things that, after you hear it, you think, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Why wouldn't? While you're, a bun in the oven being traumatized is going to come out of the oven a little bit, overcooked in some places, or a little bit doughy and gooey in other places compared with if it hadn't been, in an oven that was malnourished or whatever the case might be. And that I'm just beating the shit out of this particular analogy at this point. But yeah, the adverse childhood experiences is something that I don't think can be over publicized or overemphasized, especially I think it's a route to compassion for people. There's still a lot of the like, put the fork down, fatty sorts of stuff that goes around, especially on, social media among health coaches and that kind of thing. And I think if you just start to understand the story that leads somebody into a chronic disease state of one kind or another, it should open up a whole lot of compassion for how you're getting to be in that way in the first place. Your story about your grades also reminded me of, like, my dad used to tell me this story about when I was a kid and I was real young and I broke a lamp. And the story I told him was that a dragon flew in the window, knocked over the lamp, and then flew back out. Because, like,
of course,
I'm just a kid. My dad's not going to expect me to take on a dragon. And if, they can fly. So obviously it left right after it did that. So there'd be no evidence of the crime, like, this is the perfect lie. He'll buy this. This is the one. A dragon did it, Dad. And, no, he didn't obviously believe in dragons or any of that sort of stuff. It didn't work out well for me at all. Yeah. Not that I had an adverse childhood experience at the end of it, but, it was sort of my first lie, and my dad took note of it and it became kind of family folklore later on,
Love it.
So the intentions that you've set around, bringing cutting edge mental health care to as many people as possible is a beautiful thing. And I'm completely on board for that. I ask people about story and intentions to talk about the past and the future. But then the way that I try to bring people into that peace that's available in the present moment is by asking about gratefulness. So what are you grateful for, Amil?
Ooh, I love that. What am I grateful for? Yeah, I mean, it's like, what am I not grateful for? I'm just so, if I if I take a moment to meditate on it, it is such a roll of the dice, where you get spit out into the world, what family unit you get spit out into, what siblings kind of join with you on your ride, the spouse you end up being companion with, the friends and community you end up holding as you're raising children, having healthy children, the simple things that I take for granted. It's easy for me to take for granted, just having a home, being able to provide for my children, being able to eat, being able to dress myself in the morning. I'm very grateful for where I am, and for this kind of life that I'm able to witness. It is incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
I gotta pinch myself sometimes. Why me? What's going on?
So with all your story and all your intentions, and with the gratefulness for virtually everything that you've got, what are you creating in the world?
I don't know. I know what I'm attempting to. And I think it's not just me, but what we are attempting to do, at Meeko, is to really create hope. I think hope is very fragile, and I think it's very important to remind people that it is there, and you can find it, and that it's worth holding on to.
Tell me a bit more of the Meeko story. You told us the Amil story. Tell me a little more about Meeko.
Yeah, Meeko. I mean, after my first MDMA session, I really kind of jumped into action. I think it was during the session I wanted to pull out my phone, and my therapist, or my therapist had my phone turned off and far away from me. And I asked him for the phone, and he's like, "Why?" And so we started discussing, and it was a great exercise. But I mean, during the session, I wanted to start researching, like, what in the world is this substance? Like, what in the world is this experience that I'm going through? Right? It was the honeymoon phase, the first MDMA therapy session, and I mean, immediately after that session, I really started thinking through, like, I want, I do not have diagnosable PTSD. But I want people to be able to experience this, no matter what type of pain they're carrying. And so we started doing research around MDMA, the great work that MAPS had been doing. Started to do research in what the future could look like, and we realized, man, the future looks really, really promising. These substances are coming to market, which is great. We realize if we take a look at kind of the societal picture, what's going on. Ketamine clinics are popping up. There's demand for ketamine for the use of mental health conditions. We started learning about Spravato, and really just started getting really creative with some friends about, like, wait, is there something here? Like, what could we do? Because this is life changing. And so we started to build out this concept of, could we, if the psychedelic market, if you could assume that the psychedelic market is unfolding, how could we not only be part of that unfolding process, but how could we help accelerate the unfolding, and where would we want to play? And our focus at the time was really kind of finding a parallel. Like, has something like this been done before? And the closest parallel we got to was fertility, and the idea around fertility benefits. The kind of over the last 10 years is deeply, deeply rooted in the idea of creating fertility access to not just women, but everyone in America's workforce through the employer, because employers recognize the inequity that was required by insurance companies of saying that you must be a female with diagnosable infertility in order for you to access infertility benefits. And in today's workforce, right, employers are recognizing, well, it's not just women that are looking for infertility benefits. There's also gay men that are looking for infertility benefits like surrogacy benefits, adoption benefits, or sperm freezing or egg freezing. And fertility carve-out benefits exist in essence specifically because of not requiring the diagnosable condition of infertility to be able to get access to care. And so we thought, that's interesting. The nuance around diagnosis. Then we were thinking back to my story around, I don't have clinical PTSD, right? But I had such a profound impact from MDMA therapy. Would there be a way to bring psychedelics forward in the marketplace without the necessity of a specific clinical diagnosis or indication to gatekeep access to care? And that was essentially that idea was the genesis of Meeko in that moment, where we decided we're going to go to employers and work with employers on building out the kind of use case and value proposition of allowing employees to get access to safe, supportive psychedelic therapies carved out of the insurance benefit without the necessarily specific need for treatment-resistant depression or specifically the need for complex PTSD. And so what could that look like? And so we were off to the races. And that was about 14 months ago.
Yeah. How's that going so far? What's the update?
It's going great. It's going great. We've launched with customers throughout the United States. We've built out a provider network, that's specific to Meeko, that's delivering care. We've got incredible patient testimonials, and like our patients record video testimonials, which are just so impactful. And I think we still have a lot of work to do, right? I think this market and this industry is unfolding. I think it's unfolding slowly. I think there's a lot of caution and hesitation, as it should be. I think we're all collectively concerned about how it unfolds, how we're thinking about safety, how are we making sure that we're creating safe containers. And I think as this market unfolds, I think that there's going to continue to be strong demand for access to this type of care simply because of the profound impact and the profound positive outcomes that it's going to generate.
Yeah, I sure hope that's the case. I think it's a benefit that everybody deserves to get.
100%. 100%. So do we.
Yeah, so you're creating some impact there, hopefully, over the next decade or so, bringing this out to, across the country, coast to coast, San Francisco through Louisville, over to the Atlantic side. Yeah.
That's the idea. And I don't think there's a reason that can't happen. It's just a question of how do we meet the market? How do we educate and inform, our audience on the use case, and how are we kind of making sure that as the industry unfolds, our North Star is safety.
Yeah. I mean, depression's always on the World Health Organization's, top 3 causes of, morbidity and mortality. It's always up there in terms of lost wages, lost hours, lost all sorts of things, like the number of people who'd be able to be more productive at work and then be at work more often. Being productive seems like the math on that ought to work out for the actuaries out there. The math's way above my pay grade, but I'm sure there's some good data to be found. And then it's probably, I imagine, though, the storytelling, the case studies, the particular employees that can stand up and say, hey,
Dude, totally.
This saved my life. This changed my world. This is something everybody deserves. Kind of the same story that you're putting out there about starting Meeko in the first place. Yeah,
totally. It really just hits you for another human being is telling you that something really fundamentally changed their life. That really hits different. And I think that's important that we highlight it.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to alter that trajectory after that arrow gets fired out. And this is one of those things that reliably does it better than a whole lot of other stuff that we've tried. That's for sure. So that brings us all the way around to the 5th and final question, everybody's favorite, the identity question. It's a stumper. Who are you really, Amil Patel?
Who am I really? I am an 8-year-old that is totally clueless, that is wandering around just trying to find where I belong and hoping that I still belong here. And I'm just trying to make friends. I'm trying to learn and understand how the world works. And I mean no harm. I'm just here to hang out.
Nice. I mean no harm. the Hippocratic Oath tattooed on my forehead. Nice.
I mean, I think that's most fucking human beings, man. We're here. We mean no harm. We're just trying to figure things out. I genuinely believe that. That is the essence of human beings. We just got to tap into it. We got to find it. We got to acknowledge it. And there's always going to be conflict. We're going to work through it. But yeah, we're here. We're here together.
For better or worse, we better sort this shit out.
Better or worse, we're here. Yeah. It's
nice.
happening.
What? That's awesome. I like that answer a lot. So that's that. What do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to share with the audience here at the end of the episode?
I think my closing thoughts are, for everyone out there listening is to keep an open mind, is to just remember to check in with the best of yourself and remember to look at the best in others. We're all trying our best. And I would say, as the psychedelic industry is unfolding and this market's unfolding, let's be really, really thoughtful about what it means to have equitable access to psychedelic therapies. And let's not, while keeping safety in mind, let's not fall into the trap of mimeticism. It's like, let's not fall into the trap of doing what we think we ought to do because it's been done before. I think psychedelics provide a unique opportunity for people to be able to get access to something that really, really fundamentally improves their quality of life. And there's been, this is in recorded history, is that psychedelics have been used outside of the pathological path of, diagnosable mental health condition means that you get access to X, Y, or Z. And I think, I urge people to kind of think and think about the idea of, in the United States, as we're at this kind of inflection point and psychedelics are coming into our narrative, and we're all acutely aware of the inevitable path of hopeful FDA approval and the pathological model. What else could exist? What other opportunities exist where we're still honoring the safety and efficacy of these medications? But what other mechanisms exist where people that need support in anything that they're going through in their life, that want support in kind of reframing or taking a look at or meditating on how they're thinking about something, or anything. There's so many creative avenues that which the psychedelic industry can unfold. Maybe it's like, somatic therapy. There's a ton of opportunity. Just keep an open mind and kind of think through, outside of the pathological medicalized path, what opportunities exist and how can we highlight those opportunities, all while maintaining that these are, and we're all focused on safety and efficacy. I think there's a lot of promise in this space. We should tap into all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Beyond the clinic to the community and the cultural aspects, and how do we, be whole people in the whole world. I think this can help.
I love that. 100%.
Well, I'm grateful for your time and you sharing your story and for all of the insights that you had here along the way. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, Doc. You're an incredible human.
Cheers, brother. Doc out.